You are listening to Your Physique Radio in association with irishmuscle.ie. We are broadcasting worldwide via iTunes, YouTube, and Facebook, bringing you the latest in bodybuilding, fitness, and nutrition. Your Physique Radio. It's your physique. It's your choice. Alright everybody, welcome along to Your Physique Radio. My name is Colin Kennedy. I'm joined on the line as always by Craig Clifford. It is August the 14th, 2012. We're a little bit late with this show, but we've got good reason. But in the past weekend we had an awesome show in Tampa, Florida, the Pro Bodybuilding Weekly Championships. And we're going to give you a really good rundown. You're almost going to feel like you were there. So Craig, how have you been this last week? Did you watch the show or did you see the coverage that was online?
Yeah, I watched the show, yes, yeah, and I watched the play-by-play. Fantastic show, like, really good show. Great lineup. It feels like it's getting closer to the Olympia. You can get that kind of a buzz. I don't know, you're getting it now with Dallas next week, another stacked show. It's starting to feel great now. I love this feeling, you know. We kind of had a bit of a lull after the Arnold Classic in New York Pro, and we've had a few months with smaller shows, but nothing major, so it's good to have the big shows back.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a quick preview of it last week with all of the competitors that were in. We made some predictions. Neither myself or yourself were on point, but we definitely got some of the big names up in there. And I picked Sean Roden to be my dark horse, but I definitely didn't think he would take the show based upon his last performance, which was at the Arnold Classic where he did not place. But boy, did he prove me wrong. He comes in, he steals the show, and I absolutely cannot argue with him winning. I could argue for a tie for first place, but hats off. Sean came in, he was in awesome shape. He looked really good on stage. Great stage presentation. I can't really find any major flaws in this guy's physique. He's improved. And only turning pro in 2009 at the North American Championships, and since then he's had a kind of mediocre rise along, but he's got his first win underneath his belt, and I'm pretty sure he is going to be a contender for the top 7, top 8 at this year's Olympia if he were to go in and do the show. Craig, how did you see the top 5, top 6 guys? Were you impressed with Sean Roden?
Yeah, from 1 to 7 I was pretty impressed with. 1 to 6 actually I was pretty impressed with. Sean, I personally think deserved it. Once I seen the pictures, yeah, it was kind of his to lose, especially after prejudging. And saying that now, Tony did look great. He did look very good. One of the best Tony Freemans we've seen for a while, but not the best Tony we've seen. I'd like to see Tony at 100% next week against 100% Sean Roden. That will be a very good battle because they're very aesthetically pleasing to the eye, both bodybuilders. So it was very good. On third place, who we had in third place was Hide, wasn't it?
Hidetaro Yamagishi, third place, yeah.
A guy, again, another fantastic physique. And a well-deserved third place, let us be said, a well-deserved third place. In fourth place, we had Rolly Winkler, who kind of flattered to deceive again.
Yeah.
There was pictures put up all over the internet. I'm sure we've all seen him now. That tricep shot where his striations on top of striations, fantastic looking. And kind of like Colin mentioned last week, with a tank top, he wins the show, But unfortunately, bodybuilding is not done with a tank top on, and Dennis James is a big advocate of that. So Rolly, like, he looked great, but there's something missing. I don't know. Did he look a bit flat or something? I know it was just something missing. I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest. But if he gets it right, he could get into that top 3, into that top 2, but he didn't deserve to be in the top 3, I don't think. And Brandon Curry in 5th, is that right, Colin? You get 5th?
Brandon Curry took 5th place, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Lee Banks took 5 and Brandon Curry got 6th.
Sorry, Lee Banks, yes. Yeah. Lee Banks looked great. Again, me and Colin did not have this guy in our top 5 last week. I had Roden actually in 4th last week, so shows you what I know. So Lee Banks, deservingly came 5th, and it was definite with Brandon Curry in 6th, and a very good Brandon Curry, I might add. He looked great. The top 6, it was very tight, and I do think the best man won on the day. As for next week, it's a big show again. There's going to be a lot of guys out for redemption. How did you see second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, Colin deserving places?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure about Tony or Sean, but Sean gets the nod for first place. Tony takes second. Their physiques are kind of similar in a sense that they've got good proportion, both of them. But I think Sean just edges him out that little bit, especially through the waistline. Tony Freeman is going to be 46 next month, so he's no spring chicken, and to be hanging around the game for the last 15-20 years at the upper levels of it, hats off to him just alone for doing that. Come next weekend though, Craig, I'm not sure if Sean Roden is going to actually compete, and that's just going off a judge. That's not knowing anybody or having heard anything on the street. It's just I don't see any benefit to him competing again next week. Why put your body through that, other than the money of course, because prize money is always good. But why put your body through that again? Now, if he doesn't plan on doing the Olympia, then go for it. Get yourself an extra 10 grand. But if you are going for the Olympia, I'd be taking a week back. I'd be resting. I'd be relaxing. I'd be taking a few days off the diet for the next couple of days. Or he's probably stopped by now because it's Tuesday. But I think that Sean would be clever if he's going to do the Olympia not to compete next weekend. Because if he blows it, again, that's the last image that are going to be in those judges' mind come the end of September. But however, if he did well, he's dominating, and he's going to definitely get a good call out in the first or second round come Mr. Olympia finals and prejudging. So kind of a hard one to assess, but again, Tony looked great. I'm sure he's going to look just as good this coming weekend at the Dallas Pro in Texas. And again, that lineup is looking really, really deep at the moment. There'll probably be a few more added to it again. We'll give a rundown of who is in that show in the next few minutes, but for right now, Hidatani Yamagishi taking third place. I was very happy for him to do well, but again, I think it was kind of an apples and oranges type of thing. His physique, he's not the tallest guy in the world. Sean Roden's that little bit taller. Tony Freeman then is just over 6 feet, so it's kind of hard to compare somebody who is a different height. It shouldn't be, but it is, and that's just the way it is. Rolly Winkler, as you said, he comes in a lot of hype for this one. He's made this gain and that gain, and he's progressed this far, and to be honest, I don't think he's changed very much since his last showing. So, fourth place. I didn't have him placing top 5, so he outdid me. But, the big surprise here was Lee Banks. Like you said, Craig, we didn't mention this guy not even once last week, except when we actually listed the competitors. And even at that, we just glanced over it. There was no consideration whatsoever. He came in. He's got a nice structure. I like his physique. And I think he can do well next year, or maybe this weekend if he's competing. I think his name is on there. Again, we'll check in a moment. But as you mentioned last week, Jason Ho, you said you would be very surprised if he could come in condition, considering the images you saw of him a couple of weeks out. And I think it stood true. He was not in the shape he needed to be in. Next week, however, could be a different story. And then Todd Jewell taking 8th place. Kind of disappointing for him, I'm sure, but look, it is what it is. He didn't look as good as the guys above him, and I've no arguments whatsoever with the last couple of placings. What I will say, Craig, is it was definitely competitive. It was exciting to watch play-by-plays or online to see the pictures come up. And, Sean Roden, a lot of people don't remember him because he hasn't done very well in shows, but he has been a pro since late 2009. He's been on the circuit. I think he's competed in 6 shows in the last 3 years. So he's no rookie, but as far as I'm concerned, he's the new guy to watch in these smaller shows for sure.
Definitely. I mean, Sean Roden, actually, his physique, if you put another 15 pounds on it, 10 pounds on it, it reminds me a lot of a bit like a Kevin Levrone type of physique. Very kind of similar. But I've heard a lot of hype about Sean Roden as well in the past few days, saying 2 years he can be challenging for the Mr. Olympia against Phil Heath.
Yeah.
Nah. If Phil Heath doesn't train the next 2 years, then yeah. But people are forgetting Phil Heath would be 2 years better off as well. So I don't know where they're going with that. Plus Phil Heath is younger, so I don't know. But look, Sean Roden at the end of the day deserves his first place. If he does this week, if he gets first place this week, you've got to take your hat off for the guy. But this week will be tougher than last week. It's like making the first million is the toughest, and like it's much harder to make the second million. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's I again, like I said, I think I'll be very surprised if he shows up next Saturday, or sorry, next Friday. Tony Freeman, I'm sure, will be there because he still has to get that qualifying place. You know,
Yeah.
he's hanging in there, but he's still not right on top. He's in second place at the moment in those point standings, so technically he can be beaten out. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think regardless of where he places next weekend, he will still be on stage at the Olympia. Just to go to those points as well, Craig, again to remind the listeners, it is the top 5 guys on the point system will automatically qualify. They do not have to take the invitation, but if they don't take it this year, it's not around next year, so it's in their best interest. At 1 is still Ben Pekulski, 10 points, Tony Freeman, 8 points, John De La Rosa, 6 points, Freddie Small, 6 points, and Balto Abaspor is tied with Gregory Atoyan, both on 5 points. Now, looking at the guys who are left there, so you've got Tony Freeman, who's been beaten already by Sean Roden. Tony Freeman, to be fair, would have been a kind of a top 6, top 7 guy for the Olympia. Does that mean, Craig, that Sean Roden is going to take his place and be a top 6 this year?
Wouldn't. I mean, if Sean Roden comes in looking like he did, even maybe a pound or two heavier, even a pound heavier, and maybe a bit drier.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason why he can't crack the top 5, really, or even top 6. He can do it. If Tony Freeman can do it, Sean Roden can do it.
Yeah.
Whether he believes he can do it or not is a different thing, maybe.
You see, you also got to consider in the top 6 there, Phil Heath, obviously, he's going to be hanging on the door. He's going to be the last name called out. Well, sorry, he'll be the second last name called out, as they call the guy who wins second last, which is understandable, I suppose. Takes the excitement out if they don't. So Phil Heath will be there. Jay Cutler is not competing. Victor Martinez, as far as I'm concerned, will not be on stage either. So that basically leaves us with Kai Green, Dexter Jackson, Branch Warren, Dennis Wolf, Evan Santapani, and then outside of that, it's a fight for that 6th place.
Yeah.
I mean, you could consider Ronnie Raquel because he had a top 6 one time around, but we haven't seen him. So
you look at Dennis Wolf, Colin. Like, he's been in the top 5 in the Olympia, I think twice, but he's also in the not last year, but the 2 years before, previous, he's been out of the top 8, I think, and one time he didn't even make the top 10.
Yeah.
If I can remember correctly. So
yeah, you're right.
Conditioning-wise, Dennis Wolf can possibly be a top 3, or he can possibly be 15th. There's that much of a discrepancy with Dennis Wolf, I think, anyway.
Because you see, the thing was that Dennis, he has the awesome structure. You see this guy in person, he's a monster. I mean, his shoulder weight is just nuts. His waist is small relative to his shoulders, and his legs are as good as anyone's. But like you said, it's his conditioning. He never really gets it on point when it matters. And then of course you've got the argument about his calves or lack thereof. But that didn't stop Dexter Jackson from winning in 2008. So calves are absolutely the least marked body part. Should they be? Probably not. But look, that's the way it is. Regardless of how your calves are or not, you're still going to do well in a show if the rest of your body is in shape. Whereas if your back was shockingly poor, you're not going to be up there. It's a much larger muscle group, and more people pay attention, of course, to the back, especially when you turn around and you've got, in the past, Ronnie Coleman, who's going to hit a rear lat spread that seems to go on for ages. He flexes half a lat and then half on the other side and out, and literally lights get blocked out on stage and this guy flexes his back. But when it comes to calves, it doesn't really matter. But look, we'll move on from that. Looking at Ben Pekulski, he's definitely got a good physique. I won't say it's an awkward looking physique, but it's definitely not the most symmetrical looking thing in the world. Can he do well? I think he can, but I don't know if he's going to take top 6 in the Olympia. But again, time will tell. But right now, I think whoever wins this show next weekend, if it's Sean Roden again, he's automatically looking at a top 6, top 7 spot come Olympia. If it's Tony Freeman, he's back in the running for his top 6 place, which he's been in a couple of times in the last few years. But outside of that, Craig, in the point standings, the remaining 3 or 4 guys who can potentially qualify, I mean, to be fair, they're not going to be in the top 6. I think we have our top 6 already qualified, except for maybe Tony Freeman. And outside of that, there's nobody really who's going to push for the numbers, I don't think.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's the Olympia. Oh, Craig, just to let you know, well, I've actually already told you, to let our listeners know, my Olympia tickets are bought. The hotel is booked, and all thanks to my wife, Amanda. She actually went ahead and did that on my behalf, which was a nice surprise last week. So I'm looking forward to it. I was always planning on going, but now the tickets are actually bought and purchased. The hotel is done, and come the end of September, I will be in Las Vegas to view and give a play-by-play of the Mr. Olympia as it rolls out. I'll do it via our Facebook. I'll also take pictures live at the event as well, and from the expo while I'm there on Saturday, and I will post them up on our Facebook page. So it's facebook.com/Your Physique Radio, and we might start up a thread on irishmuscle.ie in the same context in their forum, giving a rundown of how things are going in Las Vegas come the end of September. So really looking forward to that, and a big thank you to my wife for sorting everything out for me.
See, that's how we roll, guys. We
It.
get people live in Las Vegas at the end of September for the biggest show on earth.
Absolutely.
That's Your Physique Radio, guys. You mentioned Irish Muscle there, Colin. I had the pleasure of having Irish Muscle down in Castlemaine Gym.
Nice one.
And, on this just Sunday just passed, and we were doing live interviews and a photo shoot for the Cellucor Battle. Now, I think, as far as I know, there's 8 guys involved in the Cellucor Battle, which, to people who don't know, is a battle to get sponsorship by a very reputable and very good company, which is nothing to be sniffed at, especially in Irish bodybuilding, and we know how expensive bodybuilding can be. So if you can get any bit of help, it's muchly appreciated. So Cellucor and Irish Muscle came down. We did some interviews, photo shoots, some videos. It was excellent day. And we had 4 guys. We had Peter, we had Dan, we had Carol, we had Ian. And they were 4 of the 8 lads that made it that day for the Cellucor Battle. And I must say, any of them 4 guys win, and Cellucor have got a good athlete on their hands. And just looking, I kind of took a step back, and I was watching everybody training and watching everything being done, and you know what, I kind of smiled inside, kind of going, Irish bodybuilding is going in a good direction, and it's about time too.
Yeah, Craig, when are those videos going to be online on Irish Muscle? Is it this week sometime, or
hopefully, yeah, by the end of the week, we're hoping anyway. So they've just got to do a bit of editing, you know how long that takes, Colin, especially with videos.
Yeah, it's not as easy as people think.
Yeah, plus the boys are very busy as well, doing other bits and pieces, like so. And I know they're away this weekend and they're away next weekend shooting, so they're very, very busy. So hopefully we get some pictures up. On my own Facebook page, there is some that on the gym page. That's Facebook/Castlemaine Gym, or Facebook.com/Castlemaine Gym. You'll find some pictures, but otherwise they should be up on Irish Muscle pretty soon. I think some of the lads as well had their own cameras, and they're after posting some private pics as well of the day. So it was a great day and all. Very, very fun. I hope everyone enjoyed it, and I'm really looking forward to doing the next one. So
yeah, I'd say when you sent me the text letting me know that Irish Muscle was going to come down and visit and you're going to help them out a little bit, I was definitely looking forward to see what would come from it. So, you know, once it does appear on Irish Muscle, we will place a link on our own page, on the Your Physique Radio page on Facebook, just letting people know that what is going on in Irish bodybuilding, and you know, have a look at Craig's facility down there in Castlemaine and Kerry, and a couple of the guys who did come down, like you said, Craig, for the Cellucor Battle, trying to compete for some sponsorship. And again, definitely worth doing, guys. If you aren't in already, get in there as quick as you can. Get your blog started, get your training logs in, and your diet and nutrition and your journey towards the stage. And you know, it's definitely worthwhile doing. If nothing else, it will keep you more motivated to continue to train, because you know there are people paying attention to you. So definitely a good thing. And if you haven't checked it out, do go on to forum.irishmuscle.ie, go to the Cellucor section at the bottom of the front page, click on it, have a look around, and you know, enter a competition, enter this competition, and get yourself training hard and have more motivation and a reason to be in the gym every day. Craig, I do want to go back here to the IFBB League as we look forwards, let's say, or actually I want to stay with the Tampa Pro for a moment. I just want to speak about the ladies, because you have a couple of women who are frequent listeners, and they've asked us if we would talk a little about the women's bodybuilding, just very briefly at that, but I am going to mention 1 or 2 names here. Last week I mentioned in the bikini category, let's say, we had Sarah Picken-Brown, who was going to come in, and she was originally a figure athlete, and South African living in Australia, coming to America to do bikini originally from figure, and I mean, as much as it's a good achievement to get there, she bombed it. She places 15th out of 16 girls, which is obviously not a success in most people's eyes, but I'm sure for her just to get on an IFBB stage was good for her, and more power to her. And the thing is, when you go to different countries, Craig, you'll see this as well. You look at guys and girls who win shows in Ireland versus guys and girls who win shows in Australia or in the States here at the NPC level. They're looking for different things sometimes. I don't know why. Some places are really looking for conditioning, some are looking for size, some will look for something in between, and it's kind of hard. So I'm sure it's a learning curve for Sarah, and best of luck with the next competition, and I do hope she continues to try and compete at the IFBB level. The other person we mentioned was Nicole Negroni, and she's on the other end of the scale, Craig. She comes in first place, which isn't a surprise considering she's a reigning Miss Olympia bikini. However, I don't think she should have taken first place. Second place girl, Marcela Tribin, a Colombian lady, looked unbelievable. Much better stage presence, looks much better. I thought she was in better condition. I thought her proportion was better. But again, look, I don't really know what they're looking for in bikini, to be very honest, because nobody seems to. The girls who win from week to week change, and there's very little consistency apart from the fact that Nicole Negroni seems to win every time she's on stage. We're looking at the other shows then in the figure. We've first place Anta Tone, second comes Mallory Haldeman, third Jennifer Strobo, fourth Andrea Catone, and in fifth Kamali Mako. Anta Tone has kind of been hanging around the scene for a while. She's come second, she's come third. Happy to see her take first place in this. She did look really, really good. Her conditioning was spot on. So well done to her. And I know her husband Jack is a promoter of some show in the southern states here in United States of America, or in the US, let's say. So they're definitely very much tied into the bodybuilding scene. And then women's physique, Craig. You told me just before we came on air that women's physique is going to be in the Olympia next year. Is that correct?
That is correct, Colin. Yeah, next year they have a women's women's figure Miss Olympia. So
physique.
Or physique, yeah. Sorry. So what I'm hoping is that whoever's qualified this year will get in next year. Otherwise, you're not going to have that many on the stage next year. So I'm presuming that they're going to allow people who won this year in next year. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think they should, to be honest, because I mean it should be based upon your current performance. So let's try again next year, because this is the first year that women's physique has been on stage anyway. So I think there'll be more shows next year and more qualification spots, and I think they'll do just fine if they allow them to just qualify next year. I've no concerns whatsoever for that, because that category is doing really, really well. There were 16 girls in the show this week. It's just, it's blowing up just like men's physique. Men's physique was not in this show, which is, makes the show a little bit shorter, but for some people less interesting. But for me, I'm not too concerned about men's physique at the moment. Bodybuilding is our mainstay, let's say. It's our meat and potatoes. But there was, just to give a rundown on the top 5 from the women's physique for those who are interested. First place, Nola Trimble. Second, Michaela Soto. Third, Jennifer Robinson. Fourth, Antoinette Thompson. And in fifth, Melissa DiBernardo. Sorry. Now, women's bodybuilding, Craig, we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that it's dying. And if you look at the contest calendar, I think there's only 4 or 5 events in the entire year that have women's bodybuilding, which is, that kind of states our fact. I think that it's going to be much the same next year. We're going to have less competition and a lot of athletes in each competition, especially coming towards the end of the year. And this show itself as a whole was probably the second biggest show of the year, with 107 athletes in total. But to look at the women bodybuilders, we had 23, I think, in there. Taking top prize, Sarah Hayes. Am I disappointed? Absolutely. Sheila Bleck, who we posted a picture of on our Facebook page last week, coming into this show, she looked incredible in that picture. And I'm looking at a picture of her right now doing a front lat spread, a relaxed pose, and her legs are just mind-blowing. The separation and the detail in there is just ridiculous.
Carved out of stone.
Oh my God. If you're listening, Sheila, I know you made a comment on our picture on our page. my God, I think you were robbed. Absolutely, your conditioning
Yeah.
is excellent. You look fantastic on stage. You look like you absolutely belong. I think you should have taken first place. It wasn't to be, but Jesus, definitely keep going. You're looking absolutely, if in my opinion, top three Olympia, future Miss Olympia, if your progress, or at least you maintain the way you are now, because I think you were robbed this week. I'm very disappointed, but I think Sheila Black should have taken first place. And that's no disrespect to our actual first place position, but it's just disappointing to see Sheila get beaten out by Sarah. Again, look, it is what it is, but I absolutely was amazed by the structure and the detail in that girl's legs were just fantastic. Third place then Janine Lankowski, fourth Kim Perez, and fifth Melody Spector. So, well done to everybody who did compete. It was very, very good show. It was a hard one to pick any winner in any category. But Sean Roden takes the men's bodybuilding, and we may see him next week. Craig, our show next week then is the IFBB Pro Dallas Europa Super Show. You have a list of the people in the show there. Why don't you give us a rundown of who's in?
Okay, so for next week we've got 23 competitors, guys, and we've got Sean Allen, Gregory Toyen, Troy Alves, Pablo Ayala Zayas, Lee Banks, Gus Carter, A.D. Cherry, Brandon Curry, Rodney Davis, Constantino Dimitriou, Wendell Floyd, Tony Freeman, Todd Jewell, Manuel Lomeli, Jeff Long, Cesar Mendable, Zahir Mukahal, Anwen, Ed Nunn, Sean Roden, Keith Williams, Rolly Winkler, and Hede is wrapping that 23 up. Just to touch on Ed Nunn, who was supposed to be doing the Phoenix Pro, which was cancelled due to that was on the 1st of September, and that's when Ed Nunn was supposed to. And I was kind of saying to Colin midweek on the boards that we were wondering when he's going to fit it in, and obviously this is the show he's doing. So good luck to him and good luck to all.
On that, Craig, I'd have to say if he wasn't ready for last week and he was planning for September 1st and didn't find out until last week it wasn't happening, he's going to have to do some serious work to get in shape for this weekend.
Yeah.
Like serious work. There's no way he should have been ready by this weekend if everything was on point. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes in looking good or not. My money would be on not, which is unfortunate. But looking at the lineup, Craig, anyhow, who's your top six? Not in any order, but who do you think is going to be fighting it out for some points on the Olympia standing?
Because this is really, really hard to call, my top six would be if Sean is Sean Roden in there?
He is, yeah.
Sean Roden, yeah. If Sean Roden does it, I'm going to say Sean and Tony Freeman, Edith Ada. I'm going to say Troy Alves.
Yeah.
Brandon Curry. I think Rolly Winkler. I don't know. I'd love to see him in the top three, but I can't see it.
What about our pal Ann Wen?
Yeah, and yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was actually going to mention. Ann Wen, now coming off a debut, third place, which is a fantastic achievement. I haven't seen pictures of him. Hopefully, he might post one or two during the week. I'm sure he will on the run up to get him out there. Ann Wen is a fantastic physique, and you know what? This is a really, really tough lineup. If Ann Wen can get into the top six in this lineup, for me, that's like a Mr. Olympia win for him.
Yeah.
I would think, because this is the hardest lineup, Arnold Classic included. This is the toughest lineup all year to call, and that's including the Arnold Classic.
Toughest to call or toughest to compete in?
Both.
You think so?
From our point of view, it's toughest to call, but from the athlete's point of view, they must be looking at, oh my God, it's so many guys to beat.
Yeah, you know? That's the thing, because you haven't got an Evan Centopani here or Branch Warren, so you've got 4 or 5 guys there who, they're definitely going to be fighting it off. And again, it's going to be similar to this past weekend. You're going to have Tony Freeman, presuming he does go along. You're going to have Sean Roden, again, if he does compete. It'll be nice to see who comes out on top this time. Typically, the judges always side with the previous guy if the condition remains the same. But let's say if Tony comes in a little bit tighter and Sean's a little bit off, I wouldn't be surprised to see Sean still win. Sometimes they do have a little bit of favoritism, which is terrible to see, but it happens.
Just on that note, I think if it's a tie between the two of them, which I don't think it will be, I think Tony will be a little better this week, and I think Sean will be a little worse. Just because Sean now has already qualified.
Yeah.
It might be really tough because he's done loads of interviews, blah, 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 last week. He might have eased back just a little on his diet. He still might be good enough to get second or third, which is still pocketing a good bit of money. But as far as Olympia qualification, he's qualified. Now, you did mention something earlier. If he doesn't do the Mr. Olympia, then he might want that 10 grand in his pocket.
Yeah.
Which we all would want. So, it's a tough one to call. If I had to pick a winner out of the whole lot, and this is just a guess, it would be Tony Freeman.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. The person here who has to prove themselves, well, not that anybody has to prove themselves, but the person who is going to be trying to make a point is definitely Rory Winkler. He has to do better this week than he did last week. Otherwise, his name is going to start disappearing from the pages, and we're not going to really be paying attention to him. There is one more show after this in Finland, which is in 2 weeks later than this current show. So they've got a little bit of time, but again, you're not going to have many of the American guys travelling over there because it's costly, first of all, to get there, and secondly, it's a risk. You're travelling to a different country, and this is what happens a lot of time with the likes of Rory Winkler here. Let's say he arrived in America a week out. He has to buy his food from stores he's not used to. He has to prepare it in different circumstances. He's got the stress of jet lag, but he's been hanging around for another week now because I'm presuming he's not going to go home for the sake of 2 days. So you never know. Rory could come in that little bit tighter this week. He might have a little bit more time to consider his carb up or his depletion, whatever way he's doing it. And we'll see.
You mentioned the carb up, Colin, in a post interview that I put up on our webpage or our Facebook page. He did say, kind of confidently, "Now I know what I have to do."
Yeah.
Now, whether he does it or not, it's a different thing. But Dennis James did ask him, "What is that?" And he goes, "I need the carb up." So maybe he thought he looked flat, so on. But then again, he could carb up, he could spill over. So it's a tough one to call. It really is.
That's the thing. I think in my opinion, if somebody's in shape but they're a little bit flat, I would prefer that than to overcarb and to look like you're holding water.
Yeah.
Because you just look fat on stage. I'd prefer to look small and flat than big and full, but looking fat. So flat FLAT as opposed to FAT fat. But look, we'll see how it goes. Again, there's a lot of names in there that we haven't heard before. A lot of guys trying to get their last chance, let's say, to qualify for this year's Olympia. Big Sean Allen, as he's called, BSA. He talks the talk, but he surely as hell doesn't walk the walk when it comes time to do so. He is 41 years old now. He got his pro card last year, and congratulations to him. I know he's been trying that for 10-12 years and finally gets it. But since turning pro, he hasn't done what he needs to do to compete with the big boys. And at 40 years of age, you'd start to say, well, maybe his time is over. But then you look at Tony Freeman, who's turning 46 next month, and you say, well, there's definitely a chance for everyone out there. If Tony can do it at 46, I think Sean can do it at 40, if everything comes in. Because again, he's another guy who looks good in gym pictures and Facebook pictures and Twitter and whatever, but on stage he just doesn't seem to he doesn't seem to compare very well when he's in the thick of things on stage underneath the lights. So we will see. But
when it comes to Big Sean Allen, like you say about talking the talk, I just, there's something about his physique I don't like. It just doesn't marry up properly or something. I don't know. There's just something I don't like. And for me, if he makes the top 10, he'll be doing well. Ed Nunn is a guy that can win this show outright, providing he comes in shape. Now, you did make a very valid point a second ago, Colin. A very valid point. If he was aiming for Phoenix and it was only cancelled last week, he thought he was 3 weeks out. Now all of a sudden he's 6 days out, you know? It's a big difference, like, big difference.
So we'll see you come next week. Again, guys, tune in next week. We'll have a review of the Europa Super Show, which is happening next weekend. So it'll be the 16th, I think. Sorry, the 17th and 18th of August. So looking forward to it. Now, there is a 212 class, Craig, at this competition, which we do have some interest in, considering there's a couple of names in there that we do recognise. And one of them, if you look along that list, we have not seen in a long time, is David Henry.
Yeah.
That's to be very honest, I didn't notice that until a couple of minutes ago. I just kind of glanced over the list, and David Henry is in, and he won the. Did he win it? He won the 202 showdown a couple of years back, 3 or 4 years back, and since then he's had problems, and he's been off in deployment with the military here in the US, but he's on the list. I gotta presume that means he's competing. And he's living here in Arizona like myself, so I gotta root for David. And I have to say, I always liked that guy's physique. He's 5'4", 5'5", but my God, he's built like a brick house. He's one guy who, if he comes in shape, I think it's his show to win. If we see a David Henry of old,
definitely. What I'm looking forward to seeing in the 212 class, this might sound really stupid to everyone, I want to see Marvin Ward right up against and right next to Derek Farnsworth on stage. So if you could stand the two of them on each other's shoulders, they might make an average sized man.
Well, we won't take any insults or anything, but to go on what Craig means.
In the best way, it's just the two of them are 5'0", and it'll be really, really funny to see the two of them next to each other. Now, saying that, I'd give anything for their physiques, because they're two fantastic athletes. And Marvin Ward, if I can remember correctly, is it like a Dexter Jackson lookalike? If I'm thinking the right guy.
Marvin Ward, if you just look at Marvin's pictures, he looks like he's 225, 230, but in reality he's like 167 or 170 pounds.
Yeah. There you
go. He's a monster. Like, he's a smaller guy in terms of height, but he's a monster, and he's got a really, really good physique. Like, there's very little flaws in that man's physique. So like you said, him and Derek Farnsworth competing it out in terms of their height and weight are very, very similar. It'll be interesting to see. I do think Marvin Ward will take that, but on the overall, I do think if David Henry comes in shape, it's his show. Tricky Jackson is also in the show. He's definitely something to consider there. He's done really well in the past at this weight class. Outside of that, then they're mostly international. I think there's only 5 guys from the States, and there's another 10 from outside. So again, the last couple of shows of the year, you got a lot of guys who are making their trip over. It's the summertime as well in the States, so you may as well make the most of your time. And if you win,
Ahmed, a friend of ours, Colin,
he's that guy is another threat. So as far as I'm concerned, we've got 4 or 5 guys there. You've got Tricky Jackson, David Henry, Marvin Ward, Derek Farnsworth, and Ahmed. They're the 5 I'm looking at to do well in this show. Definitely, if they all come in the best that we've seen them in the past, it's going to be David Henry in 1, Tricky Jackson in 2, Marvin Ward, maybe Ahmed fighting out for 3rd place. But we'll see how it goes. Definitely looking forward to it though, because there's some good names in there, and I'm really looking forward to seeing David Henry back on stage, because he's a guy, for those who haven't known or haven't seen him, he's competed against the regular guys in the open class for years and years and years before this 212 or 202 came in, and he actually won shows. So
he beat them.
A guy who's coming in at 200 pounds is beating guys who are 250 and 255 and 260. You gotta have some respect for this man's physique, and if you haven't seen it before, Google David Henry, and the first thing you're going to notice is his smile. The guy I don't know how he smiles so hard when he's on stage. He's constantly smiling, and his physique is definitely worth smiling about. He is incredible. So best of luck, David, to take the 212. I think you're my pick if you're in the shape that we have seen you before.
From an outsider's point of view, in the 212 class, there's a guy called Marcus Cardona.
Yeah.
If you Google pictures of him there, Colin, he looks fantastic. I've heard of this name a few times before, and when you see him, you might recognise him, but he looks good. So he's a dark horse to break the top 5 in that. There's also a guy, Quincy Winkler. I wonder, is he anything Rolly? He is from Curacao, which is in the Dutch Caribbean, so maybe there's a link there somewhere.
Yeah, possibly. Not that I'm aware of now, but I'm looking at those pictures of Marcos Cardona there that you said, and the guy he's a big 212 looking guy. Now again, everyone looks good and looks big on their own. It's when they're next to each other. That's why we have the comparison round. So time will tell. But definitely looking forward to this show. Finland, I don't think will have nearly as many good names in there as far as we're used to seeing on stage. But again, 2 shows to go, Craig. Then it's Olympia time, so it's now or never for these guys. And if they don't do well this time and they're dreaming about that Olympia qualification, that flight to Finland might not seem so bad.
That's for sure. And guaranteed in Finland is Rolly Winkler, Hide, and what's the guy? Ronnie Rockwell is in that competition as well. So with Ronnie Rockwell, on his day, is hard to beat. So I'm sure the guys want that qualification now, even though Ronnie Rockwell is already qualified.
Yeah. You see, it's a quick flight for him because he's still living in Germany. So Germany to Finland is only probably 4 or 5 hours, so it's nothing major, you know. No, not even, sir. It's probably 2 hours from Germany to Finland.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
You know, so that's not surprising that there's a lot of international guys who might jump in there, especially the European guys for sure. But
the big Polish guy is in it. What's his name? Robert Petrovich or
Robert
something?
Berneka?
No, not him.
Because he's not even turned pro yet, yeah.
Yeah, there's
Petrovich?
Petrovich or something.
Yeah.
I could be pronouncing his name wrong, but you know the guy, alright, bald head, big, huge lad, like.
Yeah.
So.
We'll see how we go. There's some monsters out there who just haven't got the aesthetic physique that we want to see on stage, and they pack more muscle than many of the top pros. But you know, when it comes down to it, if you're packing a lot around your waistline, it doesn't look as nice on stage, and that's the unfortunate thing. But again, we can only go upon what the judges say to us is the standard. And you know, we had a judge on a couple of weeks back, Brian Bowman, an Irish gentleman who is now living in the States and is an IFBB official, and will actually be working at the Mr. Olympia this year, not at the main judging table, but in some context at least. And if we go back to his interview, he did say that the abdominal area, so the distended gut, if we want to call it that, or the GH gut, whatever, it is marked down, or it is technically points deducted. But again, it's very hard to. If Phil Heath came in with a distended gut, I don't think I'd have a problem with it as much as I would if some other dude that I don't know did. You know, I'd definitely mention it and I'd make a comment about it, but I'd say, well, his arms are this and his legs are that, and I'd make excuses. And everybody does this. You know, if you like something else, you'll ignore what you don't. So we'll see how it goes. But again, the next 2 weeks, we're gonna have the final standings for the Olympia. We're gonna have a really good rundown or a preview prior to the Olympia, so the week before and the week after then. So once the Olympia finishes up on a Saturday night, you know, we might try and get a show out to you come Sunday evening, actually, so that you can download and listen to it on Sunday evening. And if I do that, I'll be doing it right from Las Vegas, so you can't get much closer than that. So again, we're trying to bring you along for the ride here at Your Physique Radio. And with that then, Craig, we will take a step forwards in our show tonight. Next up, guys, then we've got our topic of the week. This segment is brought to you by irishmuscle.ie, Ireland's #1 bodybuilding destination. And be sure to check out their new forum, which is located at forum.irishmuscle.ie for all of the latest and greatest in Irish bodybuilding. Alright, this week then our topic is heart rate training. Craig, do you want to take this one first and we'll have a discuss about it after?
Alright, well guys, give you a full rundown anyway on some heart rate training. There's different zones, and I'm sure most of you know. So I'll just go through some of them, how to calculate it and all that. Training within the zone, which would be the recovery zone, which would be about 60 to 70%, develops basic endurance and aerobic capacity. All easy recovery running should be completed at a maximum of 70%. Another advantage to running in this zone is that while you are fat burn, you may lose weight, that you will be allowing your muscles to re-energize with glycogen, which has been expanded during the paced workouts. Now, the aerobic zone, which will be about 70 to 80%, and when I use percentages, I'm using percentages of your maximum heart rate, which we get to later. Now, training in this zone will develop your cardiovascular system. the body's ability to transport oxygen to and carbon dioxide away from the working muscles can be developed and improved. As you become fitter and stronger from training in the zone, it will be possible to run some of your long weekend runs up to 75%, so getting the benefits of some fat burning and improved aerobic capacity. The anaerobic zone, which will be about 80 to 90%. Training in this zone will develop your lactic acid system. In this zone, your individual anaerobic threshold is found, sometimes referred to as the point of deflection, or the POD. During these heart rates, the amount of fat being utilised as the main source of energy is greatly reduced, and glycogen stores in the muscle is predominantly used. One of the byproducts of burning this glycogen is lactic acid. There is a point at which the body can no longer remove the lactic acid from the working muscle quickly enough. This is your anaerobic threshold. Through correct training, it is possible to delay the anaerobic threshold, by being able to increase your ability to deal with the lactic acid for a longer period of time, or by pushing your anaerobic threshold higher. The red line zone, well, this is pretty much all out, which is 90 to 100%. Now, training in this zone will only be possible for short periods. It effectively trains your fast twitch muscle fibers and helps you develop speed. This zone is reserved for interval running, and only the very fit are able to train effectively in this zone. Heart rate variations for a given intensity. A reduction in heart rate for a given intensity is usually due to an improvement in fitness, but a number of other factors might explain why heart rate can vary for a given intensity. Dehydration can increase your heart rate by up to 7.5%. It's a big one, guys. It's a big difference between fat burning and anaerobic, you know what I mean? It's 7.5%.
Yeah.
Heat and humidity can increase the heart rate by 10 beats per minute. Altitude can increase the heart rate by 10 to 20%, even when acclimatized. So you could be living in Denver your whole life and still have it. Biological variation can mean the heart rate varies from day to day by 2 to 4 beats per minute, which happens quite frequently actually. Now, resting heart rate. To determine your resting heart rate, or your RHR, is very easy. Find somewhere nice and quiet, lie down, relax, position a watch or a clock where you can clearly see it whilst lying down. Now, after 20 minutes, determine your resting pulse rate and use this value as your resting heart rate. If you have a heart rate monitor, then put it on before you lie down. After 20 minutes, check in the recordings, identify the lowest value achieved, and that will be your RHR, or your resting heart rate. The heart rate is a muscle. So regular exercise, it will become larger and become more efficient as a pump. As a result, you will find your resting heart rate gets lower, so you will need to check your RHR on a regular basis. That's actually a good point, guys. The fitter you get, the less work your heart has to do, as in pumping through the veins. So that just can be only a good thing. So if you check your blood pressure, a lot of people who are very fit or athletic will have a lower blood pressure than 120/80. They could be 110/65, 110/70. It could be average for them people, and that's extremely healthy. Now, the Carbone method, guys, I don't know if you've heard of it, but this is what we learned in college. Is calculating the target heart rate is the most effective method of determining a heart rate because it takes into account resting heart rate. Now, finding your resting heart rate as soon as you wake up, that's probably the best way to do it, guys. Saying that, I know you're probably half asleep and you know what's going on. So I'm not a morning person, so that'll never happen for me. If I try to do that, I start counting to 3 and I fall back asleep again. So finding your resting heart rate as soon as you wake up, you can do this by counting your pulse for 1 minute while you're still in bed. Or if you're like me, you can't stay awake for long, count up to 6 seconds and then just multiply it by 10. You can do it that way, but it's less effective. It's better off doing the actual minute. You may average your heart rate over 3 mornings to obtain your average resting heart rate, and add the 3 readings together and divide by the 3. So, if it's, 80, 70 and 60, then the average would be 70, that kind of way. Now, finding your maximum heart rate and your heart rate reserve. So subtract your age from 220, and that's your maximum heart rate. For example, the maximum heart rate for a 40-year-old would be 220 minus 40, 180. Okay, pretty simple to calculate, guys. Now subtract your resting heart rate from your your maximum heart rate. So that'll be your heart rate reserve, from your maximum heart rate. So that'll be 180 minus, say, 63, okay? Which is your heart rate reserve. And that'll be 117. So calculate the lower limit of your true heart rate. So figure 60% of the heart rate max reserve. So multiply by 0.6 and add your resting heart rate to the answer. So say your reserve is 117 multiplied by 0.6 plus 63 equals 133. Okay? So that'll be your target heart rate. Calculate the upper limit of your target heart rate. So figure 80% of your heart rate max reserve. So just the same calculation as last time, but instead of multiplying it by 0.6 for 60%, you're multiplying by 0.8 for 80%. And that will give you 157, provided we're we're using the same figures here now, guys. Combine the values obtained in step 3 and step 4 that I just said, and divide by number 2. That's just getting average, guys. That's very, very straightforward. I'm not going to go through that. So if you add 133 and 157, which is the last 2 digits added up, and divided it by 2, you get 145. That's pretty much heart rate training in a nutshell. If any of you need me to go through this again, guys, leave me a message on Facebook, or leave Colin a message on Facebook, and we can send you this actually directly through a private email or through a message on Facebook if you need to. So, Colin, heart rate training, what you got, my man?
Yeah, well, I'm just to mention some of the stuff you there. I think, to go on a different avenue than you did. You gave the calculation and the scientific reasons. I think in general, the benefits for monitoring your heart rate and doing heart rate training are, second to none. Especially if it's fitness orientated and weight loss and stuff like that. Now, if you're in the gym and you're trying to lift 8 reps or whatever, I don't think you should be paying attention to your heart rate, to be very honest. Because if you're going to stop, I hit 155, of which you've got strength to do more, then do more. It's simple. But when it comes to fitness and fitness training and stuff like that, as far as I'm concerned, there's no easy way out of training in terms of, I feel tired today, or this and all that. If your heart rate says you're at 124 beats a minute, you need to work harder. There's no question. So if you've set a goal of 140 average and you're working at 124, you got to increase the speed or the incline or the resistance or something to get into those zones. It's accurate. There's no way around it. Your heart does not lie. It can't cheat. It can't tell you it's not feeling good. It is what it is. Now, there are a few exceptions to the rule when you're talking about heart rate training. Anyone who might be on blood pressure medications or beta blockers, that will slow down your natural heart rate. So, if you're going to be using our equations that we gave you and using some medications as well, not a good idea, because it's not your true heart rate that you are reading, it's a modified one through medication. So if you're using any medications like that, consult your physician prior. But if you're not on medication or anything that may cause your heart rate to increase, such as a stimulant, so if you're drinking caffeine or Red Bull or energy drinks prior to your workout, they're not necessarily a good idea, because it's going to give you a false sense of achievement. You're going to think you're 140 beats per minute, and you are, but it's not because you're working that hard. It's just because your heart rate is up through to stimulant. So that's something you want to make sure you're not doing. So you don't want to take a No Explode or a 1MR. These are pre-workout drinks for those who don't know, prior to doing cardio work, if you're working off your heart rate, because you're killing yourself. You're not being accurate. You're not doing what heart rate training was designed to do, and that's to be accurate and consistent. What I would say about using your heart rate, it definitely will show you an improvement in your fitness. If you do a fitness test based over 2 miles or whatever it is, a fit test on a treadmill, and your heart rate comes out at 137 beats per minute at the end, and you redo that exact test 2 or 3 weeks later after a couple of workouts each week, I guarantee you your fitness will have improved, and that will show in the results in your heart rate. It's the most accurate way of training for fitness is via using your heart rate monitor and monitoring your beats per minute. The equation that were mentioned prior, the easiest one, which is the least accurate, is 220 minus your age. So again, we mentioned this a couple of weeks back. Let's say if you're 40 years old and you want to get your maximum heart rate, the easiest equation is 220 minus 40, which gives you 180. That's 100%. Technically, you should pass out and have a heart attack at that rate. again, this is not always the case, and I mentioned to Craig prior to coming on air that I've got a client who is in his 50s. His heart rate, according to that equation, should be 162 or something as a maximum, but he achieves higher than that on a regular basis. So it just goes to show that you need to take your fitness levels into consideration as well, not just the numbers. Most often I would recommend using heart rate monitors for clients especially if they're running a race, if they're doing a 10k or a 5k, or if they're doing longer, if they're running a marathon or doing a triathlon. It will allow you to pace your speed. If you know that I go to 155 beats a minute, I'm going to get tired soon because you've practiced that in training, you stay on 152 and you maintain that increased speed for a longer period of time. And over the course of a few training sessions, 152 will become the same speed and only 151 beats per minute or 150 beats per minute. And as you progress, increase your speed to make sure your heart rate stays the same, or push it a little bit further to make it jump up again to break a plateau, which we mentioned a couple of weeks ago as well. But definitely, if you're running a race and you want to make sure you're keeping on pace, not just by looking at the mile markers like, I'm at mile 4, I need to increase my speed, I'm slowing down. You will know for every single step that you take that you're in the right zone to make sure you achieve the time that you want to achieve. And I've done this with numerous clients, and it always pays dividends in the end. It might be a little bit confusing at the start for the first session or second session, but after that, you look at your watch, it will correlate to your heart rate monitor, which is around your chest, and it will tell you exactly where you are, and you will know to go up or to go down in speed or resistance accordingly. Cannot say enough about it. It should be the way people train today, and I guarantee you the top marathon runners in the world are watching their watch not to see their time, but to see their heart rate in correlation to the time. So very, very important that way. I would also like to say, if you are going to go out and purchase a heart rate monitor, there are many brands out there. Most will work with different devices. Typically Polar works with all of the gym equipment you might find, so Life Fitness or Techno Gym treadmills and machines, or Precore or any of those type of ones. You will have Garmin, which tend to be more expensive, but I don't see a need for them, to be honest. I think that the cheap Polar monitors, which will give you an average heart rate, a max heart rate, a current heart rate, and a time or duration of exercise, that's as far as you need. It'll cost you probably €30, €40 in Argos if you're in Ireland, or in England in Argos as well, or if you're in Australia, if you go to one of the sports stores there, like a Rebel Sports, they're going to sort you out. If you're here in the States, at Dick's Sporting Goods or a Sports Chalet or somewhere like that, you're definitely going to get a heart rate monitor, fairly reasonable. What I would say is definitely get a heart rate monitor that has a chest strap with it, or at least have a chest strap of your own. You do not want to get a heart rate monitor that you have to put your finger on each time you want to check your heart rate. So again, for people who are not aware, some heart rate monitors out there are basically a watch. You keep your finger on a point on the watch for up to 5 seconds. It gives you your heart rate. It's not the way to do it. You want to have a consistent reading. It will appear on the machine and on your watch at the same time. So get a heart rate monitor, watch and band together. It's the best way you're going to do it. I definitely recommend it for anyone. Again, like Craig said, if you have more questions about it or how to go about it, get in touch with us. Our contact information will be up later on. But as a trainer and as a trainee myself, I definitely would use and encourage people to use a heart rate monitor when training for fitness or weight loss or anything like that. Or even, guys, if you're playing sports, that's fitness as far as I'm concerned. If you're out running around a football field and you want to make sure you're running to the best ability, you don't want to be slacking back and taking 30 seconds off a lap for the sake of just doing it because it's easier. I mean, that's just ridiculous. And if you are one of those guys, please stop listening to the show, because we don't want people listening and not putting stuff into practice. So go out and work hard, train hard. If you can do it, do it. Don't just sit back and say, I'm tired, I'm not. No, don't follow suit. When it comes to sports or fitness or health, be the best that you can be, and that's all that matters. Try your hardest, and that's all anybody can ask of you, whether you're 10 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, I don't care. Try your hardest, and that's as good as you can do. But anyway, Craig, we'll move away. But heart rate training, definitely something I recommend, and it would be used in conjunction with periodization training in terms of the effort levels you would put out. So if you're talking about putting out 60% of effort, this is where the heart rate monitor comes in. You know that you're working at a certain level. You know you're not working too hard. You're not going to undertrain. You're not going to overtrain. You're going to get the most from your training. Heart rate training combined with periodization training. It's the top athletes in the world do it. So why shouldn't you? And I'll leave it at that.
I do like using the heart rate monitor as well, and it did help me a lot when training for my show actually.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very, very helpful too. Very helpful too.
If nothing else, it keeps it interesting. You can look down, 140. Let's see if I can get up to 145. Let's see if I can breathe regularly enough and regulate my breathing so that it reduces to 135. And little things like that. And it's very important to make sure that you are aware of the speed and the intensity that you're working out of to get the most of it, or the most from it. So,
it's a good guide to show you your fitness levels too. It's kind of like adding weight onto a bar. When you're doing cardio and you're walking at 4 miles an hour, and your heart rate's averaging 138, 140, and now a month later it's 134, 135, you know you're getting fitter. It's a good guide if nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to definitely go out, purchase one. 30, 40 euro, 40, $50. It's going to help you out. And if you don't know how to use it, the instructions are there. Pump it into Google. It'll tell you how to do it, or you can just come directly to us and we'll help you as best we can. But with that, anyway, we're going to move on away from heart rate training, our topic of the week, and we will move into our top fives of the week, Craig. This week's top fives, we're looking at exercises performed incorrectly. Now, we had a topic similar to this a couple of weeks back, but this is a little bit more specific to specific exercises. I have my 5, Craig. Have you got yours?
I've got my 5.
Let's do it. Go for it.
Right, so I'm going to start off with, this is no particular order, but the squat, lat pull down, the bicep curl with the easy bar, Olympic bar, whichever, the deadlift, and the tricep push down. Now, getting back to the squat, it's probably the most commonly done incorrectly from what I can see anyway. I see most people, and they're allowing their knees to go way out past their toes, and they're not pushing their hip back. Remember when you're squatting, a good guide I will have for teaching people is, imagine I pushed your hips. I really was lying in front of you and I pushed your hips. Your hip would go back first, like you're trying to sit down on a seat behind you. Okay? Remember that. You're not trying to sit down straight. You're trying to sit in a seat that's behind you. Okay? Allow your hip to go back, and then your knees will follow suit. Also, you see people lifting the heel off the ground. So they're pushing, they get down, their heels are up off the ground, they're pushing through the ball of their feet. Now for me, that's going to be really bad for your foot, first and foremost, and it's suicide for your knees, absolute suicide. It'll destroy your kneecap. If there's mirrors in front of you, you probably crack the mirror with your kneecap. It'll come straight up through your tracksuit pants and boom.
Yeah, it's
and probably the last thing I would see with squat as well would be allowing the knees to fall in when you're pushing up. So you could have a wider shoulder width stance, and you're down, and it's a heavy weight, and you're pushing up, and your knees start to buckle and come in. It's a good way, and something Colin mentioned, I think it was either the last show or 2 shows ago, about ACLs and MCLs. It's a good way of tearing them completely. That's something you don't want to do. Keep the knee travelling out over the toe, but not past the toe. So if your toe is pointing forward, follow out with the knee. If it's pointing 45 degrees out, follow out with the knee. Always follow with the knee, guys. So your toe, your knee, and your hip are always following each other. It's a nice straight line always. If it's narrow grip, shoulder width, or wide stance, doesn't matter. And lat pull down. You're probably thinking, no guys, this is a machine, and how can this be done wrong? Well, most people lift heavier than they should here anyway, and there's a lot of swinging of the hips and momentum involved in moving the stack. You see people doing it, they grab the lat pull down, they're set, so they're perfect at the very start, boom. Before the elbow starts to flex, the hip starts moving, and so your hip is going back. I mean, what the hell is that like? It's absolutely crazy. No, I will say I'm dealt with myself. I did it before, years ago, and I remember a few times Colin actually sticking his knee into my back while we were on the lat pull down, and obviously I couldn't lift the weight. So what does that tell you guys? The weight was obviously too heavy for me to keep my technique right, and like we've said a million times, we want you lifting heavy weight, but you also, your technique has to be right. If technique suffers, weight is only a number, guys. You have to use good technique, good form, just first and foremost to avoid injury, and secondly to get the most out of the exercise. Also, you see people doing a lat pull down, and they're set, and then they go back. So their hip to their neck is about 45 degrees off the ground from the ground, and you're kind of thinking, what the hell is that? Like, and their elbows are traveling back behind, like towards their upper back. That's crazy. That's like doing a real belt exercise, you know. It's not something you should be doing for a lat pull down. Now, it is a good exercise, don't get me wrong, but it's not a lat pull down, which is what you're trying to do. The object of the latissimus dorsi is to pull the elbow down from overhead. So if done correctly, your upper body should be parallel to the cable you're pulling on. Pull right down, either behind your back, which I don't recommend, I don't like it, just because of shoulder troubles it gave me in the past. Some people might have fantastic movement in their shoulders and be able to do that behind the back, lat pull down, no problem. I personally don't like it. I like bringing it down to the top of my chest. So that's lat pull down. A bicep curl, now this is pretty simple, but the big mistake here is simply not going through a full range of motion. So they start and they do the first rep, and then they come down, so their elbow flexion is about 90 degrees, when your shoulder to your wrist should pretty much be straight, not a right angle. There should be no right angles. That's a half a rep, guys. You will get half the results. And in the same exercise, swinging the bar up. Now, swinging is never good. Swinging has its place if you've done really, really good sets with great technique, and you're just, you've no spotter in front of you, so you want to throw up the extra one or two kind of forced reps, then that's not the end of the world. But if you pick up a weight and you've got to swing it up for the first one, go down, take a look at yourself in the mirror, smack yourself in the face, come back up at it properly. Because you'll hurt yourself, you'll probably tear your bicep, and then you won't be doing any biceps for the next 6 months, so don't be foolish. The deadlift, kind of like the squat, the knees go too far over the bar, so the lifter ends up pushing the bar out to avoid hitting his knee on the way up. And that's putting his back in a very compromised position. I actually seen it today with a guy in my gym, and I needed to go through it. We spent a good 15 minutes, and we were only using 2.5 kg technique plates. Now, a lot of his friends were there, he might have felt a bit embarrassed, but at the end of the day, he got it. He put back on 60 and he did it properly. He was good to go again, so it wasn't the end of the world. But you're better, guys, with any exercise, doing it correctly, because you will not injure yourself. Well, 99% of the chance you won't injure yourself. There's always the chance that you could, but getting the set right? So your knees are flexed, your hip is flexed, your bum is down, you're ready to go, back straight, and then you start lifting. No weight's coming off the ground, but now your hip, you're almost turning into a stiff leg deadlift. Your hip is after rising way up, nothing else has happened. That's the thing I see very often. You should be lifting the deadlift weight off the floor with your feet, or with your legs, sorry. Getting it up at least 6, 7, 8 inches, and then before the back comes into play, that's when your back sets then. So the first 20% is legs, and the rest of the 80% is done with your lower back. And the last one I would say was a tricep push down. This is an isolated move, which most turn into a multi-joint movement. The elbow should be tucked into the rib cage. The cable should be as close as possible to the body to stop from swinging. So if you stand in front of the cable, you should nearly be able to stick out your tongue and lick the cable. It should be that close. Your toes should be no more than, depending on what way the machine is set up, about no more than 12 inches at very most from the actual cable. No more. What else? At the start and the end of each rep, the bar should be no higher than chest. So the back of your hand should be around mid-chest at a tricep push down. Okay? At the start and at the end. If it goes higher than mid-chest, then the shoulders start to work. So you imagine you're doing a tricep push down and you're at mid-chest, now you come up a little higher, your elbows start to go forward, and that's you're bringing your shoulders into it, so that's using momentum. If the shoulders are involved, it's taking stress off the tricep while you're doing a tricep exercise properly. Also, squeezing the tricep at the halfway point. So when you push down and your arms are straight, just hold for a 1 count, squeeze the tricep and then release. Squeeze the tricep and then release. And I'd say the same with pretty much all the isolated movements. If you can hold just for 1 second count, that's all. To the layman, and you might look like you're holding it all. It might be just reps, but you know you're holding it for just a split second. It will be working, I promise you that. So that's my 5. Colin, have you got 5?
I do, yeah. I just gotta go back there on a couple of yours. I would say about the tricep press down, I wouldn't recommend licking any cables in any of the gyms because you never know what's going to be on any of those cables. Of course, not Castlemaine because that place is nice and clean and tidy. But,
there you go.
Surely not in Temple Gym in Birmingham. You're not going to be licking the cables over there. But I absolutely agree that cable should be almost touching your nose as it comes up and down. For sure. And it's very common. People stand way too far back, and there is kind of one way you can do it where you deliberately stand back and you deliberately keep your elbows forwards away from your rib cage. But that's, again, a single joint because you're only moving at the elbow once you start.
That's it.
But yeah, most often than not, people stand way back too far. Their elbows right up, their hands come up towards their eyeballs, and it just looks ridiculous. And it's the most common mistake that you see with the tricep push down. They stand too far away from the machine and they don't push up and down, and it's less effective for sure. I would say so many exercises I have are the same as yours. So my 5 were deadlift, bicep curl, squat, leg curl, and lunge. So you had deadlift. I won't go any further. What you said is true. Most people stand too far away from the bar initially, and then they put their lower back in a bad spot. And most of the best deadlifters in the world will have bloody shins after they've done their sets because the bar is that close to them. It will ride against your shin from time to time.
Actually, before you go further, you mentioned the bloody shin. I didn't mention to that guy today that I was mentoring that he got the deadlift wrong, and I was explaining to them you should be pulling the bar pretty much up through your legs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and he was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Imagine you had to wear shin guards." Put it that way, because most power lifters, good deadlifters, will have bloody shins after a good deadlifting session. Yeah. And actually, I think that's the actual thing that stuck in his head and what made it work for him. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say I'd recommend going.
But
if it happens, don't be surprised. As simple as that. But yeah, like you said, having shin guards on, that's basically what you're looking to do. Is you're trying to slide the bar up along your leg. Same with a bent over row. As far as I'm concerned, if you're in the right position at your hip and your knees are bent to the right flexion as well, that bar should almost be riding up and down along your upper leg or along your quads, and into the waistband, not up to the chest. Into the waist, so you're pulling up and back like you would a single arm row if you were to do a single arm row correctly. It's not just straight up. But again, that's actually, the bent over row.
Yeah, good one.
I did not think about, so I might, we'll leave it for another time, but definitely guys, bent over rowing, check yourself in the mirror. If your lower back is rounded, it should not be. If anything, it should be arched, definitely flat, and your hips should stay in the same position. You should not be jumping up and down with the weight. If you want to go to the really old school one where it's very, very fixed, Craig, I think you did this in one of your training videos recently.
Yeah.
You're on a platform, you're almost at a 45-degree tilt at your hip, and your back stays flat, and that's the way it should. You shouldn't be rocking up and down. Pick your position and stay there. Otherwise, if you're up too high, you may as well just do a shrug, because that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so deadlift is in, bicep curl for the same reasons you said. Throwing the weight up is just pointless. If you're going to throw it up for the sake of lowering it slowly, I can understand to get the negative effect. So get your eccentric contractions on the way down. If you're going to do it slowly, fine. But if you're throwing it up and letting it bounce down and up and down, you're looking to tear a bicep. You're not doing any good for yourself. Just put the bar down and walk away, or as Craig said, walk to the mirror and give yourself a slap in the face. With the squat, again, knees in line with your toes. No matter where your toes are pointing, your knees should go toward them. I wouldn't recommend going beyond the toe, but definitely toward them for sure. And again, like Craig said, your hips go back and down, so that if you're sitting down, you're not just leaning forwards at your hips, so you end up doing a good morning, which is for your lower back. And And one other thing with the squat, having the bar up too high in your neck, not only is it uncomfortable, it will typically force you into a bad position when you go deep enough to keep the balance. So that bar should be just kind of resting across your traps, your lower trap, not so much up on your neck. If your neck is getting sore, the bar is in the wrong position. No matter how heavy the weight is, your neck shouldn't be getting sore. Your shoulders might get sore, but not your neck. So that's your squat and your deadlift and the bicep curl. So then the two I went with then, the leg curl and the lunge. The reason being is the lunge is quite often used for female clients because, I want to tone my legs, my hamstrings, my butt, whatever. Most of them are doing it wrong. It might look similar to the actual exercise, but in practice, there's a huge difference in doing a walking lunge correctly and a walking lunge incorrectly. And I do prefer walking lunges as opposed to static where you step forwards and push back and forwards and back. I prefer the movement of continually going forwards. It just feels more effective to me. But I'll stay with the lunge for now, and then we'll move on to the leg curl. When you're doing a lunge, guys and girls out there, your upper back should stay straight. There's no reason for you to lean forwards. There's no reason for you to lean back. Shoulders back, head back, chest nice and tall. Tight through your stomach, tight through your lower back. If you want to call it your core, go for it. I don't like that term, but look, it's commonly used these days. Keep everything nice and tight. As you step forwards, so let's say you're stepping forwards with your left foot. As you step forwards, you should make contact with the floor with your heel first, and you should roll to the ball of your foot, but you should apply the pressure through your heel. So as you go down, you're lowering by pushing through your heel. And as you're coming up, you're pushing up and forwards. So your knee doesn't come back towards you. You're not jamming your knee backwards into a hyper extension. You're keeping your knee in the same position as it was on the bottom of the lunge. You're standing up and pushing forwards from the back leg, right? So the back leg is very much just there to give you that balance and a little bit of a lift at the very end of the movement. Your front foot, that's your primary concern. Push on the heel, push up and forward. Your back leg then, your knee should bend. If your knee does not bend and you're keeping your toe on the floor and you're keeping your back leg straight, you're absolutely not going low enough and you're putting stress on the back knee. Don't try and do it. It's not worth doing. Bend your back knee and push up and transition, and again apply, this will be your right foot this time, heel to ball of foot, apply most of the pressure through your heel and push up and forwards and keep going and going and going. What I would say about the lunge, if you're going to do it, make sure you got enough space so you're not stopping every 5 yards and every 5 steps and turning around. You want to have 15, 16 steps at least, as far as I'm concerned, to get the most out of it. Now, if you don't have that space, fine, but if you can walk to an area where you do have that space, then do that, or move stuff out of your way so you have a clear path to get your 15, 16 total repetitions. That's like 8 repetitions each side. And again, if your weight is in your hand, it's more likely to put you off balance because it will rock forwards and back as you swing. So if you can, put the barbell across your back and do your walking lunges. If you're adding additional weight, that would be the way I would recommend it. And as far as I'm concerned as well, keep it simple. Don't try and do a shoulder press or a lateral raise or anything while you're doing your lunges. Do your lunges, then do your lateral raise. Keep it simple. You don't need to overcomplicate things by using 25 different devices at the same time to make yourself look impressive. It's not a men's fitness magazine where they're trying to get you to do a whole workout in 60 seconds. It's not possible. Alright? Stick to the exercise, do it right, be consistent, come back and do it again, but make sure that you're getting the basics right. Pushing through your heel, up and forwards, and maintain that motion. And what I will say as well is don't just walk forwards as you're doing it. Squeeze your hamstrings, squeeze your glutes, tighten up your quads. So as you lower yourself, now it's lowering. And one other thing I always say when I'm doing a boot camp class, it might be called a lunge, but you do not want to lunge. Okay, so you're not just dropping your weight forwards, you're lowering your weight forwards. So do it nice and slow. Leg curls then, probably the least utilized exercise in any gym in the world because your hamstrings, you can't see them, they're behind you. Most likely injury in a sports field in terms of a muscle group is your hamstring. Why? Because it's undertrained. Simple. Go in and train your hamstrings. If you're doing a leg curl, think of it just like you would your bicep. It's the same movement. It's the bicep femoris, so it's a very similar name as well. Reason being they operate in the same manner. Your heel goes towards your butt or your ass, whatever you want to call it, and you lower again. And it's as simple as that. The difference is how you do it. Do it slow. Squeeze your hamstrings. Don't just go up and down for the sake of doing 12 repetitions, 3 sets, whatever it is. Squeeze your hamstrings. You will definitely lift lighter weight and get more effect. Alright, and that's always a good thing. Another thing I will say is if you're doing a lying leg curl or a seated leg curl or a standing leg curl, whichever it is, keep your ankles fixed. Don't allow them to rotate into the left or out to the right. It doesn't make a difference. Now if you're going to rotate the whole joint, as in your knees go out as well and your toes, that's slightly different. But if you're allowing your ankles just to be floppy and loose, don't. Flex your toes towards you, keep your quads tight while you're doing it, and pull. You'll feel a little bit of a pull through your calf as well, which is, believe it or not, it does happen. But definitely squeeze the hamstrings. Don't just raise your legs for the sake of raising your legs and completing whatever program you've been given. So there are my 5: deadlift, bicep curl, squat, leg curl, lunge. A little bit about the bent over row, but that's something I could spend a whole day talking about, and the lack of quality I see when people do that. Typically guys go too heavy and they end up standing up doing a shoulder shrug, and that's just pointless. Alright, the reason there, Craig, why I mentioned the old school kind of the bent over row is not only seen it in your training video for back training. If anyone hasn't seen it, go onto our YouTube page, search Your Physique Ready, you'll find us on there, and you'll see Craig training back, chest, shoulders, arms, legs, and everything in between. So definitely worth watching. You might find some new exercises you haven't done before, or maybe old ones that you have and haven't thought about in recent times, and you might get a fire underneath you to go and try them out again. So definitely check them out. That's YPR Training 101 with Craig Clifford and Your Physique Radio. Craig, and again, just going back to the old school stuff there, I was at work today, and a lady who I work with, Denise, in the late 70s, early 80s, she was very, very much into the whole bodybuilding scene. She was living in New York or New Jersey at the time, and she was training with Sylvester Stallone's current wife, who he once divorced and remarried. So they were training partners at the time. So she definitely has a very, very good understanding of how bodybuilding works and the ins and outs, and still follows it to this day. And you know, it's nice to see somebody in the older generation. Let's say, Denise, if you're listening, that's not an insult by any means, but it's nice to see somebody still taking interest in the sport after all these years. But anyway, today she brought me in a whole host of magazines from the early 80s. You've got Muscle and Fitness 1982 with Franco Colombo on the front after winning the Mr. Olympia 1981. I've got a NPC News magazine with Flex Wheeler on the front. He's just after winning the Nationals at that time, and basically the headline runs, Flex Wheeler's win makes the pros shudder, and it surely should have, considering the career he went on to take. Another Flex magazine, you've got Lee Haney on front in 1983. Will he be Mr. Olympia? Well, again, they were pretty good in their prediction. He ended up going to win 8 consecutively. A couple of copies of Iron Man, which back in the day literally had one person on the front and the cost and the name of the magazine, nothing else. And it was more like an A3 size, an A5 size, so it wasn't your standard A4 magazine, more of a pocketbook type. I've got a copy here of Muscle and Fitness 1984. Arnold Schwarzenegger's on the front. It was when he was just after making this Terminator role, so he was back in the news and in the limelight. And then a few more then there with Tom Platz on front, 1986 Flex magazine wore a tuxedo, and again we don't often see bodybuilders in tuxedos, so it's definitely an eye-catching front cover for a bodybuilding magazine. And just to say, Craig, earlier we mentioned, and in previous shows, the female bodybuilding wasn't really doing so well. And if you compare it back to the 80s, you know, there's magazines in the 80s which were 100% deliberately focused for women's bodybuilding. I've got one here right in front of my hand. It's called Women's Physique World, and it was the summer of 1989. And literally there's not a man to be seen inside this entire magazine. It's all female bodybuilding. Corey Everson's in there, Bev Francis, of course, Tanya Knight. You know, some of the best names in bodybuilding that had an outlet. Whereas nowadays, there's very, very little coverage for women's bodybuilding, which is such a shame, considering in the 80s, their events were held on their own and they would have 4,000 or 5,000 in the audience to watch. You know, it's hard to imagine that we have evolved, but yet we don't want women as bodybuilders to evolve along with us. We're kind of setting them back and putting them in a back seat. It's disappointing, to say the least.
Plus, you would think with like figure, fitness, bikini, they could make a really good magazine, and bodybuilding, and mix the whole four of them into the one magazine, you know?
Craig, I think you need to keep that idea to yourself, and we need to go with it ourselves.
Can you delete that last part? Delete that last part. Quick.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what, man? There's websites and stuff, of course, that cover it, but a lot of people like picking up a hard copy of the results, and be it a month late, it is what it is. But everybody feels more gratification and sense of achievement when they see their pictures inside a magazine, because anybody can show up online these days, you know. But you kind of have to be someone to appear in a fitness magazine, and definitely, I think there's something in the making there, Craig. You might not have wanted to mention that, so just put a patent on the idea and we're sorted.
Yeah.
We're done. But we can't call it Your Physique, of course.
Radio's first publication.
But we couldn't call it Your Physique because that was the original Joe Weider publication, which was Your Physique back in whenever it was, the 40s or 50s. So.
Her Physique Radio.
Her Physique Radio, there we go. That's it. Femme Physique.
Femme Physique.
Femme Physique. That's a new magazine that Your Physique Radio will be publishing as of next week. You can do the graphics. I'll get the interviews done, and we can get somebody to take some pictures for us, and you know that'll be.
Actually, I know a guy who's taken pictures of plenty of pros, and he can do all the pictures for us.
Oh yeah.
Actually, you know what? Actually, his name is Alan Ryan. Have you heard of him, Colin?
I have actually, yeah.
Yeah, he does all the bodybuilding shows in Ireland. And I, for one, think photography is fantastic because he took pictures of me on stage, and obviously there's loads of pictures of me on stage from my wife's camera, from all my friends' cameras, but nothing can take it like a professional photographer. He knows the shot, he knows when to take it. Everything is perfect, and I actually got some prints off him about 6 weeks after the show, and oh my god, unbelievable to see myself on stage at my best with perfect quality pictures. Oh, it was unbelievable. I have a bit of stuff here about Alan, so speaking of him, I'll run through it.
Oh yeah.
You know, Alan, he said I got some words off him, and he always had an interest in photography. But he got more serious about it in the mid-80s when his eldest girl was born. And he acquired his first 35mm SLR camera. Sounds like a pickup truck. But the business end of it did not start until the late 80s when he started selling images of nighttime Dublin. It was an amazing buzz he got when he walked into people's homes, and seeing his work on a wall, you know, had a great feeling about that, great sense of achievement. He also did a catalogue of bodybuilding photography in the Republic of Ireland from all bodybuilding shows, with possibly the exception of maybe one or two shows that were held down in Cork. Them dubs don't like the Cork people, you know. This year will also be his second year shooting the UK BFF Northern Ireland qualifiers for Great Britain.
Nice one.
His first publication was in a very first edition of Beef magazine back in 2001. It was black and white magazine back then. But since then, it became an annual event for him, and sometimes up to 3 times each year. I mean, he's the only Irish photographer to have work featured in Flex 3 different occasions. He also got work on the Australian edition of Muscle Mag International. He just recently had an email from the assistant editor, and they seem to be very keen on getting some more photos and promoting Irish bodybuilding abroad, which is great. Always good for bodybuilding from the Irish side. He recently received an award from Mick Pullman, who would be the president of the RIBBF in 2008, for his contribution to bodybuilding. And he definitely should. He's been there so long and he's so good at it, he deserves it. He's there day in, day out for all the shows. And over the years, he's photographed many people, including former President of Ireland, Mary McAleese. He had a 2-hour interview with her in 2005 for the Irish Times magazine. Ronnie Coleman, who he appeared with in Flex. I mean that he was in Flex magazine with Ronnie. He photographed Johnny Jackson, Troy Alves, Dennis Wolfe, Marcus Fluhl, Simon Robinson, Brian Schwarn, Evan Centopani, Dorian Yates, Gustavo Bedell, Big Zach Khan, Trevor Crouch, Walter O'Malley, Gary Lister, Flex Lewis, Steve Stinton, Tony Freeman, Dennis James, and a multitude of fantastic bodybuilders. He covered the NASCAR World Championships in 2006 with you, Colin, I think.
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Yeah, and more recently this year, the NASCAR World Championships again in 2012, which had just passed a few weeks back. And he's also did powerlifting shoots and Olympic weightlifting shoots. His first show he did involved, it was a bit of a learning curve back in the day. Trial and error, like us all. It was like a first timer's category for him, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
I don't think he had the patience that he does for it now at the time. He can say one thing though, all the techniques he learned through the early days, I think made him the photographer he is today, Photographs is governed, photography is governed by rules, and those rules must be applied to get the final image. I mean, digital cameras, in Alan's opinion, have ruined photography as a profession to the extent that anyone thinks they can pick up a camera and take a photo, with the exception of a few. Well, a lot of it is by chance. And I probably got 90 pictures taken, and maybe 3 of them were really, really good.
Yeah.
So, he has a point there, he really has a valid point. Did you know that, it is by chance that we get most of our shots. Now, when he was shooting a film in the early days for photography, it was much more of a craft because it was film, and it wasn't he couldn't take a picture and then see it or delete it because it's bad and then move on,
Mm-hmm.
So, what he used to do, take the pictures, he had to wait a few days until he could check the images, and then he'd get the images back from the printers to see the results. So, you didn't know the results, and by that time it's too late, the show is over, so you're depending on your good photography, which is a good thing too, I guess,
Yeah, it's, I have to say, when I did that show in 2006, I don't have any, I've only got one picture from that show, and it's a decent picture, but I would have loved at the time to have thought to myself, I might not do this again, maybe I should get in touch with whoever did the photography for the show, and it could have been Alan at the time, and got those stage photographs, because it's something to look back on and say, what, whether you never compete again or if you do compete again, look at the shape I was in, can I improve on it, or how good did I look on that day, and well done to me. It's a moment that I missed out on just through not wanting to pay the money, I suppose. I didn't see the value in it, but looking back now, absolutely, I would say to anyone out there who is competing in any type of sporting event, if there's a professional photographer there and they know what they're doing and they're taking images, get a couple, because they're going to be great for memories, and they're absolutely going to help you, especially if you're bodybuilding. It's going to help you in terms of what you need to work on the most, because you're under the lights. The picture, if it's good enough and a good enough quality, you're going to see exactly what the judges are looking at. So you're not making this stuff up in the perfect light in the gym. It's how you were judged on stage. So I would definitely recommend to anyone who's competing to make sure they get some good stage shots from a good photographer, the likes of Alan or anyone else who's out there. But if you have any information, if you've got his contact info there, Craig, email her.
I mean, you could just go on to Facebook and search Alan Ryan. He's a friend of ours on Facebook. He's a friend with Jim Castlemane, and he's a friend of myself, Craig Clifford, on Facebook. So you can go on to Facebook and get him. That's probably the best way, and you can get in contact with him through there. I think Irish Muscle might have him as a contact as well. Not 100% sure on that, but you can find him on Facebook anyway. If you need to be passed over, you can let me know. I can hand over numbers, etc., etc. I can get on to ring you. Like Colin said, guys, it's well worth it. You don't know when you might compete again, if you compete again. Now, you could be training for years and did months of hard dieting, and you might look the best on that day that you might ever look in your whole life. So it's worth having the good pictures of it, in my opinion. Now, I did spend a bit of money on it, but looking back on what I got, it's money well spent. Absolutely well spent. Like I said, you can find that on Facebook, guys, or if you need more information, get on to me or leave a message on our Facebook page.
So, Craig,
that's pretty much it, really. So, again, it's to go off on a rant there, but I just wanted to give Alan a plug. He absolutely deserves it. And like Irish Muscle and like your Physique video, we're here to promote Irish bodybuilding around the world. And we're the radio listeners, Irish Muscle, your TV guide, and your forums. and Alan is going to take pictures of you, like, and he has taken pictures of the best athletes, so he knows what to look for, you know.
When it comes time to get the pictures, Craig, let's say you're competing in 2 weeks' time, do you have to let Alan know in advance, or do you just
Absolutely
say...
not. See, and this is what I'm thinking. I might ask him, does he have the Spring Classic 2006 catalogue? He might throw them away, I don't know.
Yeah.
He might have some old film. Do you know what I mean, Colin?
Yeah.
Because what he does is he takes pictures of every single athlete, and he takes about maybe an average of 10 to 20 pictures of them.
Okay.
Of every single athlete on stage. Now, he had his work cut out from this Spring Classic because it was 108 athletes. But he'll do up all the printing, he'll give them to you in a lovely, decorative kind of envelope. Oh, it's beautiful, it looks really, really well now, it's a great setup.
What I would say there then is, if anyone who has competed in the last couple of years, chances are Alan's taken a picture of you. So if you don't have any good pictures, or you've lost them, or whatever has happened, get in touch with him. I'm pretty sure he'd have them still in stock somewhere on a hard drive or on a file somewhere. Now, if he doesn't, he doesn't. We're not saying that he definitely will, but there's a good chance that he would. So I would get in touch with him if you want to get some pictures from some previous shows in recent years, at least.
Yeah, definitely worth a shout. And he will be there in the NABA show coming up in 7 weeks, and at the IBBF Nationals in 11 or 10 weeks it is now, I think. So, guys, you can get on to him beforehand if you like, but he will be there taking pictures anyway, and it is worth getting. I promise you that.
Yeah, absolutely. Alright, Craig, well, that pretty much wraps up our show for this week. Next week we will have an in-depth review of the Dallas Europa Super Show. We'll have more of a rundown about the upcoming Mr. Olympia 2012 as well. Next week we're going to take a break from our top fives, and we're going to go back to gym reviews, which we did in our first few episodes. We're going to review a couple of gyms around Ireland that we've been to and that we've seen, the good, the bad, the pros and cons, and look, it's our opinions, how we see things, and we're basing it upon what's out there. So if we're giving a gym a 9 out of 10 and you think, oh, that place sucks, or it's this or that, you got to realise that, if you don't have these super fancy gyms, if you don't have 60,000 square feet, you have to base it on what you have to make it a good assessment from it. And we're going to go over 2 gyms next week. One is in Limerick and one is in Cork. So if you're training in Limerick and Cork, tune in next week. We might be talking about your gym. So other than that, then we will have our Q&A. We'll be back. None this week, so we're leaving it out this week, guys. So if you have any questions you would like us to ask on air, let us know, and our contact information is coming to you right now.
Right, guys, if you want to contact Colin directly, you can visit www.yourphysiquepersonaltraining.com. If you want to contact myself, you can get onto facebook.com/Castlemaine Gym. If you want to contact us at the show, it's facebook.com/yourphysiqueradio, or by email at yourphysiqueradio@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at Physique Radio.
Alright, guys, well, with that, then we come to the end of episode number 12 of Your Physique Radio. And until next week, remember, it's your physique.
And it's your choice.
Thank you for listening to Your Physique Radio in association with irishmuscle.ie. Replays of all previous episodes can be found on iTunes, YouTube and Facebook. And for advertising opportunities, you can contact us at yourphysiqueradio@gmail.com. Your Physique Radio. It's your physique.